Means we don't have to do a PG or...
Wherever you feel most
Oh. Alright. Well.
So we're going to come up and
Okay.
first.
All right. Hello, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Curiosity Club. We're your hosts this evening. I'm Tobias Berblinger, and this is Willa Colma. Together, we have a number of curious and exciting topics to share with you.
As attendees of the Hand-Eye Supply Curiosity Club, you are all now members, provided you adhere to our philosophy. Ex Curiositas Scientia. We pledge to learn without prejudice in pursuit of our mutual goal, perpetual noviceship. We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually curious and perpetually novice.
This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. The lightning bolt represents the receipt of knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination, the resonance of truths understood. It awakens and excites us and makes us hungry for more. And now let's give a warm Curiosity Club welcome to Matthew Lippincott and Molly Danielson of MDML.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for having us. We're really excited to do this talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm Matthew Lippincott, and my day job is at the Public Laboratory for Open Technology and Science, where I manage our grassroots mapping toolkit, which is a low-cost kit for kite and balloon mapping. And here's a chunk of the Pearl. And this is what we do. We make small maps.
And that could be a whole nother talk.
That could be a whole other talk, but
we won't go there. So I'm Molly. I do illustration like that. And my background is in environmental science, and I did manufacturing in Brooklyn, and I still do sometimes. I worked on their color and developing new products for them.
So we're going to warm up a little bit with starting with the restroom and water. The majority of our talk is going to be about poop and pee, and so I like warming up with other design issues in the restroom because people, it's nice to get you laughing first. And so you may have used one of these before. You've washed your hands. This is not a hand sink. This is a Victorian wash basin that's been hacked for washing your hands. That's why it has two different knobs and this stopper in it, because the intent was that you'd fill it up normally with pitchers of water, and then you'd wash your hands in a basin of water and drain it. It's completely unsanitary, so now we just leave the water running. And this is the legacy of this Victorian wash basin. And it's crappy. I mean, if you're trying to wash your hands, you're going to have to turn two different knobs which have an exponential flow rate control, and so that the actual control range, even though they turn 365 degrees, is normally in about 15 degrees of the knob. So you find yourself very precisely trying to get just the right water temperature. By the time you've washed your hands, maybe 3 to 5% of the water has actually gone towards washing soap off your hands. The majority of it's just gone down the drain because there's a terrible human interface. And if you were designing an actual good sink that might be designed around your real needs, you'd have something like this with a foot pedal on the bottom. You buy these, commercial kitchens sell them. In fact, the plumbing is no more complicated because the water normally comes out of the ground anyways. So having a volume control on the bottom and then normally a temperature control up top, you are completely hands-free and you can just, give a little bit of water as you need it. So if people were thinking about design with hand sinks, you might see these. You might even see them in more places than your restroom, in your food stands and other places.
But you probably haven't.
Yeah, you probably haven't. And then you may have a bathroom like this. This is a typical, beyond the color choices. This is a nice design disaster. So you'll notice this lip on the tub, which is exposed on two sides of the tub to a bunch of sharp ceramic objects in the bathroom. It's this lip of the tub that makes the restroom the most likely room in your house where you could die. And it's because it's at exactly knee height. And the best way to trip someone and have them fall in a way that could kill themselves, break their hip, or prevent them from catching themselves is to put it at knee height.
Or this is right below knee height, so you just kind of hook yourself.
So this is about as intelligent as installing your grill next to the steps. Especially because you have a shower, which often doesn't have a proper temperature control, even though those are now legally mandated. So you could get really hot, knock into the curtain, tangle yourself up, fall over, and your kids could find you naked, bleeding on the floor of your bathroom. And this happens because it's the most dangerous room in your house. There's also this shower curtain, which is like such a bad hack. It's like you were like, I don't know if we really want to shower. Let's just put up a curtain. We'll see. Maybe it'll work out. It's like
maybe this
100.
trend is going to go out of fashion. Showering's not a big deal.
So like 150 years later, we still have this curtain. It blows in on your leg. It's hard to wash. And it provides no support in case you're going to fall over. So this is not a good shower. This, Philippe Starck's shower, is a nice shower. You don't have to be Philippe Starck to do it. The reason why this shower is really nice and useful is you're not going to fall over. It's flat. You don't have to step over a curb to get inside of it. And you can use this fantastic device, a shower squeegee, to clean it off. Because flat walls mean you can immediately clean the soap scum off. So after every shower, if you were to do that, you're not going to get mold on the walls. You're not going to have to do like deep scrubbing of soap scum because the shower is cleanable like with every use. There are a few other things here. The Water Miser shower heads, I really like these. They're a steam shower head that's less than 10 gallons per minute. They're very cheap too. And the thermostatic pressure balanced shower mixture, which these are awesome because this is a knob for temperature, it's a knob for volume. The water doesn't come out unless it's the right temperature. It's awesome. Most people don't install these. They install a pressure balanced, perhaps, head, which might prevent you from burning yourself, gives you like 5 to 10 seconds instead of 3 seconds before you have scalding shower temperatures. But this will prevent both of those problems.
Yeah, and this is actually the norm in Sweden. These are like what everyone has.
So this is like good design in the bathroom. So some people are thinking about restroom design, and there's some good sides of it. And they're thinking about where this water would go. So Oregon, thanks to the work of Recode Oregon, and especially Brenna Bell, we now have gray water reuse legalized in the state. You can install a system that drains out to plants. And people are doing this, especially here in Oregon, California, Arizona. Gray water is growing.
And it's a really great way to, the extra little nutrients and whatnot that's in the discharge water is great for the plants.
Right. And, here in Portland, we're disconnecting rainwater from our sewer system. So people are thinking about water and the back end of this design. We've got swales all over the place catching rainwater. So these are not only popular, but it's in our psyche. Unlike these toilets, which are pretty much a design blind spot. And so that's what we're largely going to talk about. This is one of my favorite flush toilets, despite not being a huge fan. The Toto Aquia, the wall-mounted ones, are really nice because you can mop underneath them. And if you've ever seen that gross edge near your floor-mounted toilet, you might think a renovation wall mounting would be good.
So I need 2 volunteers. Yeah, all right. Pen and pen. All right, so when thinking about the toilet, you want to think, okay, so how much waste are you designing for? So both of you think about how much excreta you think you make in a year.
A year.
So draw yourself and then draw your poop and then your pee for a whole year.
Stick figures. Like to scale.
To scale.
It's like maybe a stick figure.
To your stick figure.
Whole paper, Mike?
Yeah, you just use your stick figure as your scale. So this is really important. If you're thinking about like how we're going to build a sanitation system, you have to think about how the heck much are we actually dealing with. And
For
yeah.
the year. Okay.
You don't have to be accurate, just
Okay.
what your conception is.
Wait, about
And we can take other guesses if you.
Give me some ideas. What do you think? In size?
Crap ton,
Bigger? Smaller?
shitload,
Draw one crowd.
Yeah. Wow.
and then for times 365.
Like this?
Is that the scale?
Are you trying to each one?
I'm drawing one.
All right, we gotta get faster.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna do, we want pee and poop?
Okay, so
Separate?
that you think is your poop?
Yeah, and then I'm gonna go like the rest of this paper.
Okay. So you were actually in a swimming pool of your own urine for a year. Okay, how about, what do you got?
I don't know.
Okay,
You're supposed to drink like, 3 quarts of water a day and
Okay,
probably
yeah,
like
Yeah.
most
this
of
is
that.
like multiple. Okay, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm going with the piano shaped ritual.
I need to.
Wait, so this is more pee?
Yeah.
Okay. We're adding more pee in every moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
This
here
is
we
the right
have.
answer.
Wow.
This is actually volumetrically how much you're getting.
So it
In a
wasn't so
year?
far off.
I was pretty
So yeah, this is your urine,
Yeah.
and this is your feces for a whole year.
I was
So-
really far off.
Yeah. So it's a lot more manageable than we imagined, but like we never know because we're always flushing it. And usually every poop is
Right.
actually, yeah.
And so if
We've
this-
actually done the math 5 times on this because we're so confused about this. And we thought about collecting samples to do a real one, but it just didn't work out.
And so if you were thinking the flush water that a normal flush toilet would result in, the lowest possible low flow flush toilet would fill almost half this room every year with its water.
Mhm.
And that's at
To
like
move that.
1 gallon of flush. Most flush toilets are, most low flow or ultra low flow are 1.5 to 2, and old ones are 5. So you can imagine most toilets would just fill this room with water to move this.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's inside of these. So, you know, this is your urine. It's 97% water. Not really a big deal. And what's really great about it, it has all this nitrogen in it. So nitrogen is great. We can use that to fertilize our crops. But we didn't actually find this out until really recently. When we say we understood this.
So nitrogen was discovered in the late 19th century as a plant nutrient. So we're, or in the mid 19th century,
Mhm.
as we're,
Potassium, and phosphorus and potassium. But the problem with urine is, of course, there's a small chance that there could be some bacteria. Usually it's sterile, but there's a small chance it could have some bacteria in it. And there's usually a little bit of salt, because your body's trying to get rid of any excess salt you have. So that can be a problem. You don't want to salt the earth. But the rest is just water, and that can be dealt with pretty easily. So let's think about our species then. Anything else you want to say about urine?
some viruses can be transmitted. Hepatitis is a problem.
Hepatitis is a major problem. So feces is really a lot of bacteria. And it's also a ton of carbon that are left over. And it's a pretty good source of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, but not quite, I'd say it's more than urine. Less than urine. But it has more carbon in it. And it's only 60% water. So you're dealing with a lot less water because that's so solid and compact, which is actually really great for treatment, right? Because then it's not sloshing around and being all liquidy. So the issue is that we designed our sewer system to move all of the stuff away before we realized that there were nutrients in it. So we kind of turned, industrial sanitation created the situation where we have a new solution which creates 2 problems. Now we need to get fertilizer for our crops, and we have all these nutrients going into the rivers. And the original idea was miasma theory, and that's when, the Victorian wash basin was being used. The idea that if you mix it with water, it will go away, and if there's no smell, then the problem's gone.
Right. And when our sewer system was built, there was a general belief that running water purified itself, that waste would just disappear in running water.
Which
Now-
is kind of true.
Not completely wrong. Running water moves around a lot, gets a lot of oxygen in it, and oxygen creates an environment for bacteria to fix the nutrients and other things in excrement and other wastes into bioavailable forms. And so plants and animals pull them out of the water if in running water where a lot of oxygen comes
Yeah.
in.
But if there's too many nutrients and those little guys don't have enough oxygen, they're not going to really be able to do their job. So that didn't really quite work when they started pumping more and more into the rivers.
So what would happen if we were to design a contemporary system with no understanding whatsoever of what was really in our excrement? We might end up with something like FEMA's emergency plan.
So there's no toilet plan, but if you go browse their website very carefully, you'll eventually find this really helpful 3-step diagram. Step 1, take a plastic bag. Scoop out the water in your toilet. I don't know how. Put the plastic bag in your toilet and then put the seat on top of it. And then use it and then pour bleach in after you're done. Which is really great because does anyone know what happens when you mix bleach with ammonia? And ammonia's in your urine. You get chloramine, which is this fume that knocks you out and you might go unconscious, which is great. So that's FEMA's plan. And then they say you should tie that plastic bag and you should label it human waste. So you know. Because they were thinking. And they say you shouldn't put it in your trash can because your trash can is going to be going to a municipal source and you don't want it to go there. So they say you should put it somewhere, not in the sun, because then it could get, hot and explode. But maybe like in the shade where it won't get run into. I don't know. Do you have this area in your backyard designated for your
In a
human waste?
post-earthquake situation, right?
Yeah. So we got really upset about FEMA's plan, and we were working with grad students at PNCA last fall, and we were thinking, we could do a better emergency sanitation plan than that. Given that we understand now it's 2012, we know there's nutrients in this. We also know there's pathogens. We don't want to get sick, but we want the nutrients. So we came up with our own sewer catastrophe companion, and it's now available. It's like $5, super simple, and we have it open source online so anyone can download it for free. And we had it at a show for the Center for Disease Control.
Right. So this is what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Created an outdoor pavilions. We made these toilets, which are this is a step. We call it step ups. This is made out of a 55-gallon drum. There's a slight step, and then inside there are a 15-gallon container for collection with sawdust and coffee hulls and very low smell. And we did this with volunteers. And what was interesting is that we were going to handle both the food waste compost and create a composting plan based on the World Health Organization guidelines for human waste. And all of our volunteers were really scared. This is their first time working with like poop and pee or picking up large containers of it. And they were really worried that it was going to smell horrible. And when it got out at the end, they almost universally said, what was disgusting? Food scraps. This stuff didn't smell at all.
Yeah.
And then, we were sitting there moving stuff, and what was the sloshiest, nastiest thing we ended up moving? It was the food scraps, and some of it ended up leaking, and we had like nasty dumpster juice in our truck. It was awful. But the poop and pee were no real contest. We also made a series of hand sinks. I designed these simple hand sink valves for hand washing.
Because one of the major problems in an emergency is you want to make sure people are still washing their hands, because hand sanitizer only actually works if you can't see any, there's no visible dirt on you. But if you're like outdoors and it's muddy and it's an earthquake in the spring in Portland, the hand sanitizer isn't really going to work. So that's when we came, Matthew was like, we should do a ball valve. And I was like, ball valve? You mean like a ball that just goes up and down? Because I was really tired from the heat and I'd forgotten what a ball valve was, which is embarrassing. So it's just kind of like you push up and it goes up and the water can go down and then otherwise it closes. And this is actually a modification of what the Andy Handy in Finland did, but it was $40 and we couldn't order it in time. Because we wanted to keep the design principles of like, we have to get everything locally and we have to do it with only 6 weeks prep time.
Our wonderful students.
Yeah.
Very nice.
This is what I think it is, right?
A rubber glove, not a condom. We tried a condom at first.
Okay.
Yeah, the rubber glove fingers work better than the condoms.
Yeah. So that was our first idea too.
This was featured in a show at the CDC, Constructive Interference, which is of people who are working on interventions and sanitation.
Mm-hmm. So now let's imagine you wanted to design, for the solution, if you thought the nutrients were really important and you weren't as concerned about the pathogens. You might
Or
the reverse.
The opposite.
Okay. So this is a design solution that's been around since when, the 1800s?
Right. So this is designing as if disease was the biggest problem, but nutrients didn't matter. Right.
Mm-hmm. So this is a graphic we made for Recode, and we go around the state talking to people about how their septic tanks work. And has anyone here ever used a septic tank? Right?
Not in this state,
Yeah, they're pretty common. And so what happens is everything's mixed together, and there's usually a baffle in the tank, and solids settle to the bottom just over time. And then there's a little hole, there's a room in the baffle for the liquid to go through, and the scum will float to the top, and usually that hole will be in between the scum and the solids, so only the liquid will pass through. The problem comes when, it's filled up with too many solids, and when solids are passing through. And then there's usually a second tank, and more solids will settle out. And then eventually this clarified liquid will go through. And this is where the real treatment begins, in the soil. So in the soil, microorganisms are going to absorb some of those trace amount of nutrients that are left. And up top I have a graph of the different, so your solids and other organisms, and then nitrogen. And you can see that, you know, solids are dramatically reduced, but nitrogen isn't really. It kind of just goes right through the system because it's so small. So it goes all the way through this cold soil, and because this isn't exactly where the plants are hanging out, 3 feet down, there's not a lot of roots to uptake that nitrogen. So it just kind of goes right through, and it goes into the groundwater. And the thing about groundwater is it has a direction, just like a river, only there's no turbulence, so there's no oxygen down there. So when the plume hits, it just makes a turn and just goes straight. And it's usually about as wide as the pipe coming out, and it can go on for miles. They've been detected up to 1.5 miles away. So this is really good at removing solids and other organic material, not so good at the nitrogen and the pharmaceuticals. Those are so small they go all the way out.
And so you get things like this. So on Oregon's coast, they found caffeine is detectable up and down Oregon's coast, specifically after rain events. And that's just one indicator. The USGS is currently doing a lot of work tracking where coffee goes in Oregon, in our groundwater and rivers, after it gets through you. And now that you may have to drink like 16,000 liters of ocean water in order to get any sort of like green tea buzz. But it's still, this is a bellwether of where small chemicals that go through our bodies are going. We don't have a means of treating them, specifically with septic tanks and these systems that serve like 1/3 of the population.
And one of the other problems is that these septic tank fluids are then leaving property boundaries. So it's really important to make sure that they're not intersecting other plumes. And so that gets into some tricky territory because all of a sudden arguing with your neighbors and then arguing over your neighbors about things that are underground that neither of you can see is a whole other problem.
And what this ends up doing, and so people, in Oregon we have a lot of agriculture. So people often ask us, well, isn't it the cow poop, right? It's not our septic tanks that would be polluting. And most of these trace things, like, you know, the cows are getting caffeinated, that's the caffeine we're finding. But somehow it's like, it's got to be the animals, it's got to be feedlots and things. And so it did some work to try to come up with an equivalence. Well, what's your groundwater impact versus, you know, a cow? And your groundwater impact in relation to a cow, you're about as bad as 10 cows. So when we're dealing with on-site systems and things, when using a septic tank, because you're going below that plant layer for disease, to prevent disease transmission, you know, you're going all the way underground to prevent disease transmission, which is great to prevent disease transmission. But then you're out of the plant zone, and so all those nutrients, now the plants get them, they go straight out, just like you were heard.
So our next set of solutions is, so let's design solutions as if we really were overly concerned about the nutrients, not as concerned about the pathogens. And this happened mostly in the 60s and 70s. People started thinking, hey, there's nutrients in our shit, let's start using it. But there were some kind of problems with these designs. So one problem is that they were mixing kitchen waste in.
This is the early Clivus multrum.
So this is like a toilet seat here, and you have a direct drop, and then you mix maybe some carbon material. And the idea was that magically all of these solid materials would flow in, and if you put a marble in here, it would be the first one to come out, you know. But the problem is that, you know, a bunch of lumpy poop doesn't actually all roll down this ramp. First in, first out. You know, sometimes they were getting the third marble came out first, even though it was the third to go in. And it was really hard to tell when all of this stuff was done, really done, and really pathogen free.
And then this is about nutrient collection, right? They're trying to design around how can we maximize nutrient collection? So through this kitchen scraps shoot in. Well, kitchen scraps often have all sorts of animal larvae in them from your food, specifically fruit flies and other things. And so you introduce all of these flying insects, and they would mix in here, and they'd get really happy. And then if the airflow wasn't working exactly right that day, or maybe there was like the wind went the wrong way, because it's normally vented with the fan, you'd have fruit flies flying out in your bathroom.
Which is a huge disease problem, right? Because, you know, flies have these tiny hairs on their legs, and if they touch poop and their tiny hair legs and they touch something else, you know, the pathogens are transmitted, which we know now. And there's been some other design problems as well. So anal wash water is really tricky.
So that's another one. In the United States, we wipe our butts with water, and most of the rest of the world, people wash with with toilet paper.
I mean,
and most of the rest of the world, people wash with water. Also, many people, you know, maybe excited for some hot butt sex, you know, use a little enema or something. So, like, these are things that actually have to deal with in the bathroom, and that we, one, don't talk about, and then these ecological solutions often don't design around because they're things we don't want to talk about. So you actually have, like, a radical ecological technology pushing kind of a conservative sexual agenda in the bathroom, which is crazy. So there are lots of design issues. We really have to deal with this intersection of the ecological, the social, and the human design issues. So let's look at a couple systems that do that. There are a lot of toilets in the world. We brought these posters. If you'd like them, we sell them for $7 a set on our website. So here's one. This is cool. This is urine diversion. And this is a urine diversion toilet. It looks kind of like the toilet we showed before, with a scoop to the front for pee and a scoop to the back for poop. A engineering solution, like, hey, how about we collect all those nutrients that were primarily in pee? Men can't pee into this toilet standing up, which the engineers didn't think about when they designed the first set of them. So there was kind of a backlash against the installation of these, specifically in Scandinavia, where they started being installed. So now they get installed with urinals.
So this toilet is a urine diverting toilet, and then men just use the urinal.
The system would go like this. This is how much it costs, and this gets rid of most of the effluent nitrogen by 80%. It's a pretty simple hack because their typical septic system still works, and most of the nutrients just get brought out in the urine. And then this is outside Stockholm, and this is urine being applied to a field just like a liquid chemical fertilizer. And this is subsurface injection, so no one has to smell it.
And this is a apartment building outside of Stockholm using the system where they're having the urine diversion.
Right. Then this is a dry toilet, so it goes into these wheelie bins. This is a similar system based on that. This is a failure. This is called the China Erdos project. The project was a failure owing to a lot of cultural communication issues, government mandates, but the toilets they designed are awesome. This is a dry toilet that uses a sawdust flush, so you push that side and it doses sawdust into this Teflon-coated bowl that then flips over. So you don't have to see anything, smell anything. It's a really nice toilet. I think from a design side it would be great. I hope that this project, even though it was kind of, this is now like an archetypal NGO toilet disaster, but I hope that people can take some design lessons from it.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think about how it would have gone if they had done it in Sweden, where the people initiated the project. You know, it probably would have gone really well, and this maybe would have caught on, but instead they decided to like scale up their project and do it in China, and you know, someone installed the fans backwards, so instead of venting the urine out the house, it was venting the smell into their house. And people were like, I was given this public housing, I was really excited about moving up to a flush toilet, and you give me this? Come on, you know?
So not culturally sensitive, you know, attempting to imagine something as just a technical solution, but some good technical solutions.
Yeah. So this is kind of cool. This is a foam flush. You maybe would have encountered this. So instead of having to use water, which is takes up a lot of room, just using a foam to kind of lubricate the entire inside of the toilet bowl, which sounds a little weird. So everything just kind of falls in very quickly.
So there's a big bottle of soap instead of water in the tank. It's like a foaming soap dispenser only into the toilet bowl.
And this can allow for it to go to a compost and just have more carbon to make up for the little bit of liquid that's coming with the soap.
So
but it does allow composting.
So we trashed Clivus Multrum at the beginning, so I just want to show that they started this, 40 plus years ago, and they've improved their systems a lot. So this is what they go with now, and so they've gotten this whole foam flush system into the basement, and these work quite well.
Yeah, and it's really great because then they can do retrofits to buildings where, say, you can't have a compost chamber directly below the toilet, but with the snaking foaming flush toilet, they can kind of snake the drain through. And this is a really great system in Finland called the Biolan, and it also has that sawdust chamber, and you hit the little button, and sawdust falls down, which is very satisfying.
These are really nice. I just read today that there's now a Canadian supplier for Biolan as of April of this year, which I'm really excited about because I like these are really great. Also, this is a cool design feature. to think about. When I first saw pictures of these, I noticed they had foam toilet seats, styrofoam toilet seats. And I was like, styrofoam toilet seats, that's the crappiest, cheapest thing I've ever seen. Like, who? Then, we were in Europe, and I got to sit on one. It was kind of cold out, and there wasn't that much heating in the space we were in, and then I sat down on the toilet seat, and I realized that Finland's cold. And styrofoam toilet seats really nice.
This is a simple bucket toilet system. This is popular with a few people in Portland. And it's basically just a simple one container underneath with a lid that goes down directly, and then just using sawdust to mask any smell. And sometimes it's mixed with urine diversion, sometimes not. And they just have to get a lot of carbon material to absorb all those nutrients.
This is the end result. This is David Omick's system down in Arizona. And he's out, this is in the desert, so he's composting outdoors, and this is high heat composting. So he's getting probably between 130 and 160 degrees inside the pile. And for comparison, pasteurization temperature is 160. So this is kind of a biological pasteurization in many ways. But you can also see that there's a lot of work involved. Every one of those buckets has to be emptied by hand. So good user experience in the bathroom, not necessarily the best user experience in the processing side.
These are vacuum toilets. You probably use these on an airplane or a train. This is a pretty easy way to reduce the amount of water used to move waste, just by using a vacuum to suck, and then you can use less water. Usually it's about a fifth the amount of water. And that allows for easier treatment. And it can be mixed with like a biogas digester, or it can be put to the regular public sewer compaction.
Yeah, and these are, we think in an urban environment, these would probably be the kinds of systems that would come in. The user experience is basically identical. The piping can be snaked in, and they've been getting these systems have been getting pretty good the last few years. This is a series of houses in Germany that have them. Astoria now has a vacuum sewer system running on the coast. For a part, it goes into their regular sewer system, but just because they couldn't use a gravity drainage right along the coast. So these are showing up. You might see more of them soon. They look just like that. And they're cheap because even though the infrastructure is expensive, they can get cheap because the pipes are so narrow that they can just trench the side of the road. They don't even have to rip up the whole road to install vacuum sewers. This is for a whole town. These are each about this big. So this is the whole infrastructure for several thousand people's vacuum system. It's really not very big.
Yeah.
This is in for pump outs in Japan. What the system would look like if there were no sewers, and this is popular in Japan. About 10% of Japanese households have pump outs. So these municipal trucks run around and just pump out the back of someone's house. So it's doable. There are first world countries that are handling this.
So one of the issues when we got into sanitation about 2.5 years ago, we realized we were never really going to solve this problem because this is a really interrelated problem. Like we need, people to give us feedback. We need more technology. Like we need different technology, and we need like a legal structure that will allow and encourage this kind of, iterative design process. And so we kind of were like, well, maybe we're not really, maybe the only thing that will ever contribute to this field is just opening up space for the discussion. Because right now we're in this situation where nothing's going on in sanitation. Like it's very much thought of as like this problem is solved. We have toilets, we're fine. Yes, we have CSOs. Yes, we have contaminated waterways. That's not related. We're fine. We have solved sanitation. And we've been looking more into this, and a lot of it is, regulatory things. Septic tanks are written into the codes. They are the encouraged go-to technology, sewers.
None of the things we just showed you, although many of them are legal, none of them are normal installations. If you were to get one, they require variances, they require exemptions, they require going through specialty codes or little tiny side parts of the law. So none of them, even if they are higher performance or lower cost for meeting the same objectives, none of them are normalized. And that's what we've realized is that, it's one thing to work on the design issues, but ultimately what's needed is a whole design ecosystem where these things can be tested out and implemented. And we think that the key way to do that is portable toilets. So these are portable dry toilets. We've been investigating these for the past 2.5 years and are interested in starting a company around this, which would be the first in North America.
But it's been done everywhere else.
Yeah.
So this is in Switzerland, and you'll notice these look like totally like a porta potty that you've seen before. That's because they were made in the USA, and they were sold to Germany, and then they outfitted it for composting.
Right. So this would be just like using a regular portable toilet, only instead of nasty blue gunk, you'd have kind of a nice fresh wood chip smell.
Yeah. And these are some really awesome anarchists who started a cooperative portable toilet business to fund their art gallery, which is really incredible. And they're now hired by the city of Geneva every single summer because they have the best toilets and really great service. And they make the toilet stand just for themselves. Yeah, their gallery's doing great. Fully funded now. So we realized that this was like a simple solution, and through doing festivals, we could, try out a new design. It wasn't like, hey, we're gonna renovate your bathroom, it might not work, we'll come back in a year. It's like, we're gonna do this festival, we'll see how this goes, and then maybe we'll have another rollout next summer with, slightly modified technologies,
So we think that in terms of changing this field, work around the margins and around the edges of it, and these little cracks especially that appear around the edges are important. So that's why we've focused on addressing regulatory reform, education, and emergency response. So we want to show you a little bit on the emergency response side. These are folks in Christchurch, New Zealand, after the Christchurch earthquake. The New Zealand Permaculture Guild had their own response. So Christchurch had an earthquake, it's a 6.5. For comparison, Portland is supposed to get a 9 sometime in the next 50 to 100 years. And all their sewers pretty much cracked all over. And so for 6 to 9 months, depending on where people were in the city, they couldn't flush their toilets because it would go directly into the groundwater, discharge onto a street, or out into the bay. And so people needed a mid to long-term solution, and what they were working on were dry toilets, just like the bucket toilets we showed before, and then emptied into wheelie bins. And this was something, we're not sure if they ever truly hooked it up with the municipal system, but the goal was to link the portable dry toilets in people's houses into the municipal composting system temporarily until they fixed the whole sewers. And this was a small-scale test. They were inspired by work in Haiti. So after Haiti's recent earthquake, and this is a quote from Bill Clinton, the UN brought cholera back to Haiti for the first time in about 130 years. And hundreds of thousands of people have gotten sick, 6,000 plus have died, and it was because the UN doesn't know how to build toilets. And the UN went in and built latrines in flood zones and didn't build proper toilets for their own workers who they brought in. And so you can see the level of design issues we're facing, like when even a large governmental organization doesn't know emergency response. Soil came up with a different solution. This is an NGO working in Haiti, and these are one of their toilets. And you can't quite see it here. It's something I really like. This is a urine diversion toilet. The lid to this toilet has a handle on it. Have you ever thought, like, Right, we've been fighting over putting lids up and down in toilets in the Western world for a long time. And you have to stick your fingernails under the toilet to like lift it up because there's no way to actually grab the seat. Because no one thought that you might lift the toilet seat. This is a design they worked on with patients, many of whom don't have restrooms. And one of the first things they were like, ooh, it's icky, I don't want to touch the toilet seat. So they designed a handle into the toilet seat, which is great. So good design work going on kind of at the edges of the sanitation world. And they are using WHO guidelines. And here's a truck. And this gets back to our initial question, right? How much poop and pee do you make a year, right? So the back of that truck is holding a week's waste for 20,000 people, right? They have one truck, and they're lugging 20,000 people's waste out, and they're doing open compost bins. This is sugarcane bagasse, which is a waste product from sugar manufacturing in Haiti. It's free, and they use it as their cover and bulking material. And they get extremely high temperatures. It's tropical heat and sun. They're at...
Yeah, it was like 160 for 6 months. So the World Health Organization requires you to get to 155 for 3 days. And you're like totally clear, you're killing the really tough parasites. So they're nuking the tough parasites.
Yeah.
But making some really great soil, and they're doing some local gardens with that in the area. Yeah. Did you want to talk about other things? Anyway, so this is how we've kind of gotten to this world where we're working on the regulatory reform side with Recode Oregon. We've done 2 or 3 codes now,
Yeah.
changes.
Worked on site-built composting toilet rules are in the REACH code. It's unfortunately another alternate method. It's not in the main code. And right now we're working on general on-site systems and septic system rules. And yeah, we're working on this emergency sanitation response work, continue to address that. Our guide, the Sewer Catastrophe Companion, we're working with Flush, which we're also members of, which is a public restroom advocacy organization, and the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management to integrate that into their official emergency response plan for the city.
Yeah. And we've been giving talks around the state about septic tanks and how they work, and kind of getting people's responses and like their questions about how do I find an affordable system that works. And it's been really interesting to hear kind of what people really want when they're allowed to talk about this issue of sanitation, which is so kind of awkward. Yeah. We've been starting a lot of talks with, so who here poops? And they're like, if you don't,
Yeah,
you
not a
don't
lot
need
of
to
hands.
attend. Leave now. So it's been good.
I thought before we go to questions, I'd close on a nice little positive note. We got a lot of positive energy from the Middle East over the last year, so I thought I'd bring up Sana'a in the Yemen. These are buildings in Sana'a. Many of these buildings are 1,000 years old. They're 6 to 7 story urban buildings. Sana'a is a very dense city. It's one of the world's oldest dense cities. And they have a really excellent sanitation system. They use urine diverting toilets. Here is one's plan, and it's very hot and dry there, and so they have a chute that goes out the wall, and actually these beautiful decorative ledges have built into them slightly sloped ramps that are all south facing on the building. Because it's the desert heat, before your urine has made it one width of the building across, it's completely evaporated and all the minerals are left. And so they get rid of the pee that way, and then the poop goes into these chutes in the backs of the buildings that are ventilated, that don't smell, and it dries out, and they actually end up burning it for fuel because they're so low on fuel. And then eventually the urine's scraped out and the ashes are all used as fertilizer. So ecological sanitation can happen in a city. It can happen in a pre-modern context even, and let's hope we can come up with something as ecologically situated for our own city. So it's going to take a variety of solutions. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Questions?
Well, so it seems like a lot of people are doing like composting toilets, and it seems like pretty, I mean, from what it looks like, a pretty straightforward thing to turn pee and poop into fertilized soil. Has there been a lot of, or any successful like businesses that actually sell that back, or manage to at least cover costs? Is that a possibility? Have you guys found out?
No, it's not a possibility. It's just not worth enough. Unfortunately.
Yeah, the going rate for compost is about $38 per cubic yard.
Okay.
And that's like really good. That's like an amazing price. Most people are getting $14 a cubic yard. So I think we mapped it out. If we had a portable toilet company and we did like 20 big festivals a year, we'd be generating about like $3,000 worth of compost if we were selling it. So that's not really the revenue stream. The revenue stream has to be like either through service fees or through maintenance contracts.
Just be an offsetting.
Yeah.
Now,
Or maybe you could grow something of really high value in that compost, like hot peppers, and then make a pepper sauce, and maybe the pepper sauce would justify the cost. But
it might. So the nutrients in your excrement are worth at most about $60 to $80 a year.
so that works totally well in like Africa and like other developing countries where like that's like okay, the math works there, but here it doesn't really motivate us.
Right. But that may be dependent. The reason why fertilizer costs are so low is because fossil fuels. We use a lot of fossil fuels to manufacture nitrogen. Nitrate fertilizers take 5% of the world's energy, or natural gas, sorry. 5% of the world's natural gas goes to just making nitrate fertilizers. And then we mine phosphorus, which is probably going to run out by the end of this century. So we have artificially low fertilizer costs. Historically, collecting excrement used to be a for-profit business, night soil, as it would be called. Although that was not often done in an epidemiologically safe way. Like the city of Shanghai used to have a competitive, back in the turn of the century, the last century, had competitive bidding on excrement pickup. And it was like people were fighting to get the contract. So.
In London, but they had actually lowered the night soil workers had lower disease contraction rates than a lot of the other people who were doing the moving.
Like
Wow.
you can survive and you can surviving.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew.
I guess this is a slightly ridiculous question, but you're saying that the costs are sort of arbitrary, or not necessarily as. Let me start over. The cost of fertilizer is lower than it should be.
Yes.
Because of an incorrect use of resources.
Like,
If that were to change, would it be more profitable potentially to sell fertilizer
Totally. Yeah.
in a way that might be a better use of resources globally?
yeah.
Yeah, and wastewater treatment engineers are already talking about this. We were at a conference this spring for wastewater, like large wastewater plants, and they were talking about the price of phosphorus going up. And so there's a plant in Tualatin that recovers the phosphorus and sells these pellets. And they're pumped about the price of phosphorus going up because they're already capturing the phosphorus out of the water.
Now,
But they're spending a lot of money on that.
they're spending a lot of money, and they're getting the phosphorus out, they're using huge amounts of mined magnesium to initiate a reaction to get the phosphorus out. So it's still a very high energy system, but
Yeah.
they are doing it, and yeah, there's a whole discourse in waste treatment right now on mining sewage. They're talking about it.
Though I would just argue it's the water that's the problem. That's what's making treatment so expensive.
How does the sawdust work as a cover and are there other materials that you would use?
Yeah, you could use anything that is dry and will absorb, the urine and has a source of carbon in there. So coffee hulls are great. We have a lot of those in Portland because we have a lot of roasting going on. Sugarcane bagasse, paper, if shredded, really, really small. I mean, tons of
Wood
weird
chips.
dry byproducts.
It serves several purposes, covering up being one, because it's carbon and it sucks up moisture and any smells that are coming off really well. But it also serves a purpose in the processing of like bulking and other things. Building the compost is kind of, there's several things related to that, but just covering up anything carbonaceous, even leaves, and paper work great.
Because the carbon for a composting toilet is serving the purpose of what the septic tank does, which is take everything underground to hold it away from us. Whereas if you have enough carbon, there's actually a small barrier that can work, but it has to be, a solid carbon layer. It can't just be like one leaf. And be like, oh, I'm safe. Because a fly can dive around a leaf, right? Yeah.
Any other questions?
So you guys also talked about like salt content and that potentially ruining the soil. So how does you just dilute it to a certain point and then it becomes okay, or is you actually like convert it somehow, or how does that work?
That would be if like urine is being applied directly in a really concentrated lot to one small area of land.
Okay. So it's like
But
every
if
dog
urine's
pees
being-
on the same bush every day,
Yeah.
no matter what. Every day. It's like a fan in the front of your yard.
Yeah. But if like the urine is being mixed with the poop and then all of this carbon material and the salt content is much,
Okay.
It also depends on the nature of the soils. So like here in the Northwest, we get like slowly draining soils. So the plants are going to grab the nutrients and keep them cycling, and they're not going to grab any of the salts. So the salts are going to very slowly leach through the soils. So here we aren't really going to have a problem with salt accumulation. Eastern Oregon in the desert though, they can get they have a huge problem with salting in the soil, it's just the irrigation water, because they don't get that same continuous flush through the soil. So yeah, the use depends on a lot of ecological factors.
What other kind of cultural things are standing in the way of making effective changes? I guess you mentioned quite a few.
What other cultural?
I would say just in general unwillingness to talk about sanitation. Like when I talk to septic haulers and like wastewater treatment engineers, they talk about the fact that they think their customers are satisfied. They're like, no one has any complaints. I don't see why you're proposing new solutions. You know, no one's calling me up being like, I'm so tired of my flushed toilet. It's wasting nutrients and contaminating my groundwater. Like, no one's making that phone call. You know, it's like, you know. So if they think their customers are satisfied, you know, they're not going to work to design a new solution. You know.
Does the CDC have kind of an arsenal of some type of portable toilet in case of
emergency? Not that I know of.
The emergency plan in Portland is to bring in porta potties and put them outside.
Okay.
But that requires roads to drive on.
Yeah.
A little tricky. I don't know how the earthquake will go. Maybe the roads will be fine.
The fact that Haiti got cholera, although horrible, brought international attention to the fact that most aid agencies don't know really how to build toilets and haven't thought a lot about it. And a lot of work is going on in that field. I personally think that projects like Soil that are very situated, that have been in Haiti for a while, that are working on culturally involved sanitation systems are going to be more successful than any of these kind of one-size-fits-all technical solutions. Because the techniques of these systems haven't really changed in the past 50 years. It's mostly been tiny design tweaks. I really think these whole systems are at a point where this is it's no longer an engineering problem. It's no longer a scientific problem. It's really, we're at an issue of what are the design issues? This is really a problem that designers need to tackle.
And then being allowed to implement them with the rules that we have in place. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Free boxes for everyone.
So thanks Matthew and Molly again for coming. In 2 weeks on August 21st, our guest is Libby White of OMSI here, and her talk is entitled Choose Your Own Adventure, Code in the Museum. This talk will provide a behind-the-scenes look at making software for interactive exhibits in the Science Museum. Did you tune it out at the word software? Well, come back. This will be a participatory Choose Your Own Adventure event, complete with the suspense and high-stakes drama you've come to expect from the CYOA empire. What tools will you use for the job? What jobs will you be asked to do? What crucial systems will malfunction? What diabolical bugs will surface? How will you harness the power of serial communication? What even is serial communication? There's only one way to find out. Don't worry if you haven't got a lick of technical knowledge. Come and find out how Libby's biggest job fear went from what if they ask me to do something I don't know how to do to what if they don't. Well, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.